So if you're going to animate, obviously you're going to need to draw something. You can do it two ways. You can just draw directly into the program. I'm using a mouse at the moment, but obviously if you're going to do more advanced stuff, you certainly shouldn't be using your trackpad on your laptop. It'll make things considerably harder for you. If you can get hold of a graphics tablet, they make life a lot easier, and you can do better quality animations and artist work with them as well. So you can sketch your artwork and bring it into Flash, Animate, sorry, and then just trace over it essentially, or you can draw directly into the program. Some people prefer to start off with a sketch drawing and then do it with pencil and get it just right, and then bring it in and trace. Or you can just use the tools at hand and draw directly in. So I'll show you both, and I'll show you some of the drawing tools that you can use along the way as we go. So what I might do is, firstly, I've got a sketch. I'll just go File, Import to Library, and I'm going to go find my sketch. Okay, so that's gone straight into my library up there. So I'll just go bang there it is. So I'm just going to click and hold and drag that from my library. So that's a little bit too big for my stage. So I'm just going to go up here to my transform tool. You can see any of these tools, if you're not sure what they are, if you just hold your mouse over them without clicking, a little yellow floating window will pop up and not just tell you what the tool is, but also that letter in brackets at the end is the keyboard shortcut to quickly select it. So this, I'll just bring this back to a single line. This selection tool up the top, the letter V, get used to that one, you use that a lot. And the one we're about to use, the transform tool, is the letter Q. You'll use that a lot as well. So at least remember those two, they will make your life a lot easier. So I'm just going to go to the letter Q and choose my transform tool. So I'm just going to move it down. You can see it's added these little black, what are called essentially handles, where I can, if I move the mouse over the corner, I get this diagonal thing like that, where I can resize it. Now, obviously, I've squished it along the way. If I just undo that, I've just gone Command Z. There would be Control Z on a PC. If I hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and then grab it, it keeps it in proportion, so I can't squish it. Okay. Additionally, this same tool allows you to rotate. If you just move your mouse outside the corner, you see I get a little circle arrow or a rounded arrow near my thing. I can now click and hold and rotate. Okay, my object. And the same deal, if I hold down Shift, that will snap it to 45-degree movements. So if you want it to be more precise, that makes it a little bit easier as well. And one other thing you might want to do is when you choose the transform tool, you can see this little circle here in the middle. That's called your registration point. So as I rotate, that's what it's rotating around. Okay, if you want it to rotate around something else with the transform tool selected, you can actually move that. So let's say we move it up here to top corner like that. And now when I rotate, it will rotate around that point. Okay. I'll just put it back at the center for the moment. So there's no real point with something like this, but that might be handy if, say, you're drawing a person and you want them to swing their arms. You want to maybe rotate the arm to give that idea of movement. So you'd want the registration point to be up near the shoulder, not in the middle where the elbow is, because that would look weird or detached from the body. So things like that it can be quite helpful with. So I've brought in my sketch. Also with your tools, I didn't point out before, some of these have little arrows in the bottom right hand corner. That means that if you click and hold rather than just click, there are other options. It has more options in the menus that you can choose. Okay, so there's the gradient transform tool as part of this one. We will use that a little bit later on, but not right now. Okay, but just be aware, anything with an arrow has more options available. You can just click and hold. So I'm just going to go to my arrow. I'm going to click on Ducky, and I'm going to, under this lock here, I'm just going to click on the dot, and that locks that layer. I can't grab that anymore. Okay. I'm just going to up here. It's always good to name your layers because you'll end up, once you get more advanced, using a lot of different layers. So just double click on the text, and I'm going to call this Ducky Sketch, like that. And then I'm going to create a new layer above it. So to do that, over here you've got this little page, or this little icon that looks like a page with the corner turned over, that one, and you can see without clicking it tells me that creates a new layer. So I'm just going to create a new one, and I'm going to double click that, and I'm just going to call it Ducky. Okay, so now I'm going to essentially, I've done this sketch in pencil, I've scanned it and brought in, but as long as it's decent quality, you can just take a photo on your phone and email it or whatever works for you. And then use the drawing tools to trace over it. So what I might start off doing is just use the oval tool for the basis of the head. And over here, down here, I've got my stroke line or my stroke color and my fill color. So for the moment, so if I draw that now, I've got my stroke is black and my fill is a light blue. So if I were to say draw a circle like that, you can see that it's got a black line and a blue fill. Okay, so I don't want that. I do want the black line, but I don't want a fill just yet. I'm just going to do outline. So I'm just going to click on fill, the actual color there, and it brings up my swatch or my palette. And up here, I've got this box with the red slash through it. And that means transparent, no color at all. Okay, so now if I drag across like that, you can see it draws the circle, but with no fill. I'm just going to undo that. So that's what I want. Also, if I go back to my properties, now that I've got the oval tool selected, like I said before, these properties have changed. So with my stroke, if I want that line to be a little bit thicker, I can just drag my stroke up like that. It's probably a bit too thick. So you can drag it around like that, or if you want to be more precise, you can actually just type in the number there, let's say 2.9, and then just press tab to jump out of that box, and that will choose that selection. That's not so bad. So that's what I'll use. So I'm just going to sort of trace around the general shape of Ducky's head, and then I'm going to go up here with my arrow tool. And this is a cool thing you can do with Animate, is that if you move over the line of a shape, you can see that I'm getting that little curve, because you can reshape a line. So obviously you don't want a perfect circle for a head, it's going to look a bit weird. But you can just pull those bits in and just give it a bit of character. So you just click and hold. Like that. I might sort of do him in a bit like that. There we go. I'll push his head up like that. And just give it a bit more of a slightly off shape. Okay, so what I was saying about layers before is when you're drawing a character that you want to animate, it's a really good idea to use different layers for each of those parts as well. So what I'm going to do later is select all. I'm going to use lots of different layers for this character, and then use different layers. Select all the layers rather, and turn it into a movie clip. But for the moment, I'm just going to draw. I might just double click up here and call this head, and then I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it Bill. Now, the reason for doing that is firstly it's good organisation, because it makes it much easier to animate and grab hold of stuff on different layers. Or it's good organisation, but also if I'm drawing over something, like for example, if I were to use my line tool and draw the bill, I'd obviously fix that, but what I've done by having that on, oh, I didn't have the right layer selected. Let me just pretend that layer doesn't exist and I'm on the head layer. There we go. So let's just bring that back. So let's say I use my line tool and I start drawing my bill. Because they're on the same layer, I've basically intersected those lines and I've cut them off. So now I don't have a full circle. If you see, I've got these dots around here, but it's cut off there. It actually sees, if I press the delete key, it sees that as a separate section. So in this instance, that actually helps me, but in some cases it can be problematic. Okay, so I might actually leave that now that I've done that, because it is actually helpful. So I'm just going to reshape that line and bring it up like that. And what you can do, I didn't explain that bit, is that if you move, like when you move over the sort of the middle of a line, you get that little curve, so you can reshape it like that. If you move over the end of a line, you get a little right angle. That means you can grab that and move that end point around somewhere. Okay, so what I might do is just reshape. And this is where you start to get problems, which is why I wasn't going to do it. because now that it's cut off, I can't reshape that whole line. You can see because it's cut off, so I can only reshape it from there. Okay, so it does create problems with your animation. So I might actually do it the way I was going to do it in the first place, and do it like that. So I'm just going to lock the head layer, unlock the bill layer, use my line tool there. Drag those lines down. And what I actually might do is just use my pen tool. And you can see, just if I show you this, see it smooths the line a bit. Down right here with pencil mode, when I've got my pencil chosen, often it'll start off with straighten selected. So if I try to do something like that, or like that, it adds really sort of jagged, straight corners and lines to everything, which isn't great. So I always use ink, which adds a little bit of smoothing to it, but nothing too drastically that it changes the shape or the style of it. So what I'm going to do now is just grab the end of with that, just trace like that, and then I'm just going to reshape the line a little smidge. Got some problems with my line there. Oh, because it's separate, that's why. Okay, that'll do. So, what I might do is real quick, this is another quick trick, is I'll just click on this line and hold down shift and click on that line, and I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to go back to, so just go on Command C, go back to my head and choose paste in place. It pastes them exactly where I took them from, and what that will do is it will cut off, like I was saying before, it'll cut off that line. So if I go delete and then delete those lines again, I've now got the bill going above the head. Okay. So what I might do rather than use real shapes like that is, or specific shapes, is just trace by hand. Depending on what tool you like, the brush tool can be good. If you click on that, it gives you, I just need to create a new layer, choose body. And I tend to, what I'm doing here is just locking all the layers except for the one that I'm working on, because it's really easy to forget and accidentally draw on the wrong layer, or think you're drawing on the right layer and be drawing somewhere else and all that sort of stuff, and it just makes things a little bit messy later on. So once you've got a lot of layers, you can actually just click on the lock itself like that. That locks everything, and then you just click on the lock to unlock the layer that you want. So with your paintbrush tool, as I said, it tends to smooth it a bit. We can go a little bit bigger with the size. It's probably a bit too big, so probably about 4 is all right. Yeah, that's not so bad. And you can see also that because it's a brush and not a line or a pencil, it's using the fill color rather than the stroke color. So that's important as well. So we need to change our stroke color, our fill color rather to black, and then we'll get that like that. So if you mess around with the brush tool, your smoothing, if you drag it up a bit, by default it starts on 50. It gets sort of you can see it sort of thickens and thins elements of the line. You sort of get a bit of an anime look as well. So if you want to do sort of anime style things, using the brush tool and upping your smoothing setting can get a really nice effect and a nice look. I'm just sort of playing around at the moment. So I'll just use that. I'll delete all these later, but I'm just going to trace around the duck's body as smoothly as I can. Now, if you want this to be sort of a super smooth and super precise sort of drawing, you can use shapes and stuff, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'll give him his tail feathers. There we go. I'll give him his wing as well. I might undo that one. I missed that one. There we go. So, that's got the body. Now that I've done that, I actually don't like the beak, so I might just quickly change that. And I don't like the head really either. I might just do it all traced. So I'm just going to delete that. An easy way to select something, which is another reason why it's good to use separate layers. If you click on the frame there, the keyframe there of a particular layer, it will select everything that's on that layer. So I press delete now. That selected the whole head layer. And now I can just got a bit of a bumpy head, but that's not so bad. And I'm going to do the same with the bill. So I'll just click on the bill, delete, and I'll trace it. Because I kind of drew this with the intention of it being a bit sort of jaggedy and rustic anyway. So that'll work all right. That's pretty good. So if you want to have a look at how it's looking without the picture behind it, you got this eye here, that's your hide. You can click on a dot underneath that. If you click on the eye itself, obviously that hides everything. You can see all the crosses there for every layer. Click on it again, it brings everything back. Or you can hide individual layers. So I'm just going to hide the sketch. And that's what I've got so far. So that's not so bad. I'm just going to use my arrow tool here, and I'm going to do what's called a marquee selection. So what I'm going to do is click and hold up and above these lines, and I'm going to drag a square around all of them. And that means that they're all selected. So I'm going to press delete now, and they're gone. I'm going to do the same with these ones over here. So this is called a marquee selection. Just use the arrow tool and drag around a particular selection of objects or objects, etc. That can be really handy if you're, again, animating a body and you want to select just, say, the lower leg below the knee rather than the whole leg. You just want to select that bit and bend it at the knee. Things like that can be handy. So we've got the bill and the body. We might do, real quick, we'll just do a new layer, double click it, call it legs. I'll lock everything and then except for the legs layer. I'm going to use, again, my paintbrush. There we go. So again, it's a bit messy. You take a bit more time or use a graphics tablet, would make life easier. And now we're going to do another layer, eyes. So I might include the eyebrows on this one. Big discs for eyes, basically. Okay, close enough. So I'm going to use the paint bucket here, which is my fill bucket, paint bucket, to fill in the black of the eyes, just like that. And I might use my paintbrush just to go over the eyebrows a little smidge. I might just give them a little bit of wispy hair up there. So I might put that on the head layer. So I'll come back here, lock everything apart from the head layer. I'm just going to do fairly indiscriminate. There we go. It's a bit rough, but be alright. So now I'm just going to hide the sketch layer, and there we go. We're left with our duck. Forgot to give him nostrils, so I might just do that on. Unlock that and go to the bill. Just draw some little ones there. There we go. So this is our duck. I might just go, I'll unlock all of these now and go to my body. Just fill in that a little bit. So I want to fill in his body here. I'm going to make him yellow. So I'm going to go down to my paint bucket and I might just choose sort of this yellow. sort of go to my fill color, I meant to say there, and then use my paint bucket here and click on into filling. And he's not filling. Tell me why. Tell me why. Well, there's two reasons. When you use the paintbrush, it does actually, like I said, it thins out the line, so sometimes that can leave little gaps in your line. But before we try that, we need to check something else. Now, it looks like a joined object. It looks like one big person, but we've done all of these different bits on different layers. So if we were to just click on the eye to hide all the layers and then just unhide the body, you can see it's not a closed off shape here. Right? So we can't fill it because it would basically just bleed out and fill everything. Bleed out into the entire stage. So an easy way around that is just to real quick, just grab the line tool up there, do a real quick line like that, just to close off that shape, and then we can use our paint bucket to fill in. Yay! And we don't need that line anymore, so now once it's filled, we can actually get rid of it. Just click on it. So I'm just pressing the delete, I'm just selecting it and then using the delete key on my keyboard to make that go away. There we go. I want to do the same with the wing. I might give the wing a slightly darker shade. You shouldn't have trouble with this because that should be a closed off shape. So I'll just go there. Keyboard shortcut for fill is K, as you can see there, the letter K. That's a shortcut that will make your life a bit easier. I might make that a little smidge darker. That'll do. And I might give him super light tail feathers. There we go. So I'll bring back all these other ones apart from that. Oops. Apart from that. And that's what we've got so far. So I might, I want the, I'm just going to choose the legs layer. Just going to click on that frame. I want the legs to be the same shade as his wing here. All right, and maybe I can't remember what the wing color was. What I can do is just click on my little fill there and just move my mouse across. Okay, now I don't want to do it yet. I'll just press the escape key on my keyboard because I clicked on that frame, the legs are selected. So it's actually going to change the line of the legs as well. So I'm just going to use my arrow tool to click on a blank part of the stage to deselect those. All right, but my legs layer is still chosen. Now I'm going to go back to my fill bucket and I'm going to click on my fill color palette. I'm just going to move my dropper, just move my mouse over and it turns into a dropper over the color that I want, which is that one. You can see up here, it even tells you the hexadecimal number if you wanted to use it in Photoshop or whatever. So just drop on it and then click on my legs, on my feet, and they're not filling either, and it's for the same reason as before. So if we were to hide the body layer right now, you can see those feet aren't closed off. So it closed the bottom section because I've got a line here, but the other ones won't close. It's the same deal. We can just, with the legs layer selected, draw a little line there, draw a little line there, press the letter K to choose fill, fill. Just going to fill, got this little toe bit down there. And it's not filling this bit. So this is a bit I was talking about before. If you have drawn a shape and it looks like it's a closed off shape, there might actually still be little gaps in your line. And so it won't fill, it doesn't see it as a closed shape. So what you can do with your paint bucket selected is you get this little circle down here, and it's called gap size. So if we click and hold on that, you can, by default it's set to don't close gaps. If we choose close small gaps and click again, it fills it in. It basically just, and sometimes if that doesn't work, you then just go back and go close medium gaps and try again, close large gaps, and then if it's still not working, there's a bigger issue you need to sort out. It could be that you haven't closed it off like this. So it basically, that tool ignores, just deleting these lines again, ignores the gaps in your line, right? So it basically says if it's a medium gap, just close it off and ignore it, pretend it's not there. And then it basically lets you fill it. Okay, so I'll bring my other layers back. Don't need that one. I might actually delete, now I've got this the sketch on, I'm just going to delete this layer altogether. I don't need that anymore at all. So I've just clicked on the layer, down here's my trash can, that layer's gone. I'm now left with just the, oops, a daisy. Just wanted to, just have a bit of a gap there, that's all. So then I'm left with just my character. So I'm going to fill in his face with the same colour as his body. Again, not filling, so let's first check that it is a closed off shape. We'll just hide all the layers and then bring back head. So you can see there's a big gap at the bottom, so it's not a closed off shape. So same deal, what we can do is just use our line tool, make sure our head layer is selected, there it is, and just do a line up there like that, a line up there like that, and then a line like that. And then I'm just going to use my paint bucket, fill, there we go. The reason I did up ones is just because it'll be easier to get rid of after the fact. And what I could also do, even though I've got my fill colour here, I can actually, now I've got rid of the lines, it treats the edge of that colour like a line, so I can actually just drag that down and reshape the colour itself. Bring back my bill, and there we go. Okay, so now because this is transparent, I need to close off the bill as well. So same deal, just going to draw a line like that. Use my fill. I might bring back my body because I want his bill to be the same colour as his wings. And I'll go bang like that. It's daisy. So you can see there's a big gap there. So I'll just choose down here, close medium gaps, try again. Large gaps, try again. So the gap actually might be too big for it to deal with. So I might just drag it up a smidge, choose my paint bucket. And I might just hide the others to see what we're dealing with. Oops, rookie error there. That's a good one to figure out. I actually drew the line to fill in the bill on the head layer, like an idiot. So I'm just going to double click that line and go edit, cut. I'm going to hide my head layer, go back to my bill layer and choose edit, paste in place. And then I'm going to use my paint bucket, fill it, there we go. That line is actually still selected for me pasting it, so I can just press delete. And we're back in the game. Alrighty. Okay, so I'm just going to fill in his eyes with white. That's a pretty common mistake actually, so we'll pretend that I did that deliberately to help you out in the future. But it's important to be able to, you can see it's actually bleeding out and filling the whole face because I've got a little gap there. So if I just choose close medium gaps, that gap might be too big for it to deal with. So I might just use my selection tool. Not just, what have I got here? Oh, I know the issue. Just hide them all apart from the eyes. Yeah, it's not actually closed off, so it's just filling the whole head. So again, I'll need unlock my eyes layer. Make sure the eyes layer is selected, and I'll just go line like that, and I'll just round it out a bit like that. And then I'll bring back the head so I can see if it's still actually working. There we go. Oops. There we go. So I can bring them all back now. There we go. We've got a duck. He's a bit rustic. You take a bit more care with him and make him look a bit nicer and a little bit smoother, but that's essentially how you can use your own sketches and then trace them in. Okay. So now what we're going to do is, in the next lesson, now that we've drawn, is animate this guy. So it's important to, just as a recap before we finish up, is the whole point of this was firstly how you can use the drawing tools, some of them, but also how to bring your own artwork in as a pencil sketch and trace it into Animate, because that's most likely how you will probably do your animation, unless you want to draw straight into the program, which is fine as well. But if you want to do it, that's how you can do it. You can just bring it straight in as an image into your library, drag it out of your library onto your stage, put it where you want, and then resize it and draw.